I think all of your catchers should have a copy of this, whether or not, or some variation of this, whether or not they're actually calling the game, but I think they need to be able to understand these things to start learning about it. All right, final thing, in just literally the strategy, how much does your game situation take into account, all right? Hang with me here, because I ran this by both Lauren and Libby, our pitching coach, literally just shook her head, and she was like, you're gonna lose a lot of people on this one, Jen. So tell me please stop me and tell me if I lose anybody on this, okay? Depending on the pitcher, I think it plays in a great deal. Depending on the pitcher, I think it doesn't even come into my mind. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. I've got a Megan, a Jalen, all right? I think on any given day, they can go out and beat anybody in the country. I think they're that good. 9 times out of 10, what my mental process is gonna be, and again, I've done a tremendous amount of scouting prior to all this, but we're talking, I get in a game. I'm looking at their strengths, I'm looking at a hitter's weakness, and then I'm looking at game situation third and final. And I don't care if we're in a tie ball game or in extra innings or whatever the situation is, early, late, whatever, I am still working I'm still going with their strengths because they're that good, because they're that dominant, because they're that effective, all right? Well, let's flip it, all right? I've got very much a pitch to contact kind of pitcher. Like, I am not getting strikeouts with this kid. I don't think she's better than many hitters, let alone the best, you know? The game situation is going to become more important. So if I've got those three things, pitcher strength, hitter weakness, game situation, that may flip to the second one. Okay, so I still might look at her strengths first, because I think you always have to throw what they throw best, but the game situation may come in next into play. Then third becomes the hitter's weakness. So we've got a pitcher on our team, very, very good. I've got a clip of her at the very end. She was the rookie of the year in the conference last year. She won 18 ball games as a freshman. Like, kid's fantastic. She is a drop ball pitcher, okay? So when I'm telling you this story, Peyton is not a high strikeout kid. She had 90 strikeouts over the course of her entire season last year, 90 Ks on the year, okay? I am most likely going to get a ground ball out of Peyton, okay? So I'm still gonna call the Peyton strength. It's still probably gonna be a drop ball or a changeup. But the next thing in there for me in terms of game situation, I'm gonna bypass the hitter's weakness at this point, and I'm gonna figure out based on the game situation, do I want ground ball left side, do I want ground ball right side? So that's where I'm going, change in or out, drop in or out. So game situation comes into play next for me where it never would have with Jalen or Megan, if that makes sense. Okay? Yes?
Are you calling defense as well?
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So I'll get into that as well, okay? So basically, if we've got a kid who's a strikeout pitcher, like she's that dominant, I think she's that good, high strikeout kid, I am always going to play for the strikeout. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, I don't know. It's what I do, okay? So we're going to play for the strikeout, and then we're going to put the defense where the defense needs to be if the ball gets hit, when the ball gets hit, okay? We have, I'll go into it further in depth, but we've got defensive positionings. All of our kids, like that's actually part of what goes on their armband now. But literally, like everybody on the entire field knows where they're expected to be on every single hitter. It's not a generic thing. It's not us calling it from the dugout. There are no numbers. There are no depths. It's literally every single kid. They've got defensive positionings literally written out on their armbands for them, okay? So that's how we're going to play if it's a strikeout pitcher. If it is somebody that we're pitching to contact, or I'm much higher, I think there's a much higher ability for them to be putting the ball in play, the game situation is going to take a lot more of that into account. Does that make sense? Didn't lose anybody on that? All right, so basically, if the game situation is being taken into account, we need to figure out what the hitter's responsibilities are, and I've given you just 4 super basic ones, okay? If this is a situation, this is probably the pitch she wants, and then here are going to be some keys that we're going to talk about or that we're going to think about in terms of the pitch call. So super basic stuff in here. Clearly, these are not going to be all of the situations that they could have to look at, but those are going to be some of the more basic ones, all right? All right, once we get past understanding the strategy and what factors should be important, let's go into who should call the game, okay? And I think this is is for me a hot topic when it comes to youth ball, and especially the younger they are. We have a 9-year-old bat kid. She turns 10 in February. This will be her 6th year with our program. God knows why I had a 4-year-old in the dugout, and her birthday's in February, so she literally would have just turned 4. But this is literally the kid's 6th year with our program. She's not even 10 years old yet. Anyway, so they live up near where my parents live. Father's Day weekend, my dad and I go out to watch Momo and her team play ball. Okay, we walk up to the field. They're on a 10 and under team. Momo is 9. Okay, she's literally like 8 plus another 6 months, kind of like 9 plus 6, like she's literally only that old at this point, okay? We walk up, all of the kids have on armbands, and we're calling pitches from the dugout. No, you're not, okay? Like, they don't throw change-ups. They don't throw change-ups when they're 8 and 9 years old. They don't know whether they're throwing inside or outside, so what these guys were calling out of the dugout, I have absolutely no idea, but silly, like absolutely silly. At some point in time, you've got to let your catchers learn to call, okay? So why do coaches call? Number one, we call at our level because we've got a whole lot more information than our coaches. To me, if our catchers want to call, then they're going to be in the office doing 6 to 8, 10, whatever it is, hours worth of scouting with me on every single team we play. If they want to make that investment, fantastic. But I'm not going to hand them a report the night before a game and think they're going to memorize it and that they're going to be able to effectively call based on that, okay? So to me, any information is good information. I think the team with the most information typically wins the ball game if we're talking about relatively comparable talent, all right? Again, this is what I spend in hours per team. This is not for an early season tournament where we're playing 5 different teams and those are the number of hours. This is per team, okay? So minimally, we're watching 4 to 10 hours worth of film, so that's anywhere from 2 to 5 games. Plus another, this is literally what I spend actually physically when the writing process starts for me. These are the things that I have available to me. I have spray charts. I'll go over all this. I've got pictures of everything. We have video. We have traded scouting reports, which means Jen has just gotten done playing somebody. I email her and I say, hey, can I get a scouting report on so-and-so? She says, yep. She sends me a report. And then past charts on the same opponent. Like we play the same people year in and year out for reasons. So all of those charts I already have, all right? This process, these 6 things, this is me personally. Jen's process may be completely different. Kathy's process may be completely different. Hope's process may be different, okay? So I think this is going to be individualized for all of us. And frankly, I've never talked to anybody else about how they scout, like what their process is. So I have absolutely no idea what anybody else goes through. This is just my process, okay? So first and foremost, I'm creating a master grid of my opponents and then their opponents. And I'll show you what I mean, okay? So like, whoever we're playing next, I need to know everybody else they've played, so I know who I can contact for reports. I'm going to email them. Sometimes that takes 2 or 3 times. I'm super passive aggressive. If people don't respond back, I will keep sending that same email over and over and over again. I got no issue with that at all. We print off spray charts that there's an outside company. There's 2 major companies that do this. They take care of compiling all the data for me. I used to do all this by hand. Massive time saver now that we actually have the ability to get this from an outside company. I will recreate last year's spray charts on a brand new spray chart for this year. I watched film, we chart pitches, so like I'm not going to trust that Delaware said they threw this person a rise in and then a drop out or a curveball or whatever. I'm literally going to go pitch by pitch and chart it all myself so I know what I see with my own eyes. And then finally, I'm going to study all of the post-game reports that I've gotten from everybody else, compile all the information, and then write my own report. So here's what it looks like. So this is Tennessee. This was the first opponent we had in our regional this past year, okay? So I've got this massive, I love Excel. If I can put it into Excel, Lord knows I do it. So this is what my scouting thing actually looks like. It's page after page after page. Everything runs horizontal for me. Basically, everything is color-coded in here. These are all the teams that I reached out to last May when we found out we were going to Tennessee. Here's who I need information from, okay? Now you'll notice that there's no SEC teams on here because none of us are allowed to trade on our own conference opponents. So like now that Jen and I are in the same league, we can't send a report to Hope about either one of us. Okay, so that's a no-no for everybody, okay? So here are all their non-conference opponents. If it's green, this means that I actually got a response and a report back from somebody. If it's gray, that means they told me no and then they gave me a reason. If it's yellow, that means I sent them once. If it turns orange in the top corner, that means I sent the second or the third one, okay? So you can see that all of these people I never heard back from, but I sent them at least 2, maybe even 3 reports, okay? So that's step 1. The amount of time that goes into that is mind-boggling, as dumb of a process as that may seem, all right? Here we go into our spray charts. So we use what's called diamond charts. What they do, they give you the current year, and then they give you all of the kids' past years as well, okay? So this is one of the Hofstra hitters who graduated this past year. This is what her 17 chart looked like. This is what her 18 chart looks like. And so what you want to see, the left-hand side, these are against left-handed pitchers. These are against right-handed pitchers. And what you need to start seeing is that how much these 2 boxes end up looking similar to one another. And so that's what I mean. It doesn't matter who they're playing. It doesn't matter what pitcher they're seeing. It doesn't matter whether she's, quote, having a good year or a bad year. These things end up looking really, really similar. Same thing here, it's just a better breakdown at the bottom of what percentage of her ball she's hitting into all the fields. And so you see a lot of tendencies in all of this, so that's how we start making some very basic decisions when it comes down to defensive positionings for our players. All right, next step for me, I will take the last year. So like for Hofstra, Lord knows I've got like 15 charts on every single kid on the roster, okay? So this is what our spray chart for each game looks like. Every single kid, every single opponent we play has a chart that looks like this. All of their information goes up top. When I'm done, the whole scouting report gets written in this position, this box right here. We fill in, we make decisions on our defensive positioning, so every kid on our team is standing in a certain place when this kid gets in the box. All of the stuff that goes on here prior to the game is what she did against us the year before. Black are outs, red are hits. So I know visually, I can look down at a very quick thing. She hit a home run on a drop in that was really middle. Like I know that automatically without having to pull a chart from last year. I know what Petrofessa did against us, okay? Here are all the outs. So literally 2 hits against us in 17, whole bunch of outs, fast out that she pulled, okay? And then drop in that was middle that she took opposite way, all right? So that's the starting process for that. Then we go down to, I've emailed 8, 10, 12, 25, whatever it is, different programs saying, hey, can I get information on your game against Hofstra, okay? So literally this will be an entire sheet. All their hitters will be listed on it. All the pitchers will be listed on it, catcher, team stuff. If coaches have certain patterns where they're doing things and certain things, literally we list as much information on it as we possibly can. So I've cut out the things that 4 of the ALAG, for this series alone, I had 11 different reports on Hofstra. So here's what 4 different people said about it. You can see some of them are very good. Some of them are almost no information whatsoever. So you really never know, like aggressive swings, like, hey, thanks a lot, that's awesome. Yeah, what am I gonna do with that? So anyway, you can see that some of them are really useful, some are not. So basically, I take past charts, what we've done against her in the past, what her spray charts look like, so what her tendencies is for what she does on the field, plus video, plus what everybody else says, and then mash it all together, and then this becomes mine. So here's what, this is just the front side of what my scouting report looks like. So this is actually physically what our kids get. This is the exact report that they got on Hofstra last year. So we go jersey number, right-handed, left-handed, are they a slapper or hitter? Stats, if they're in red, they're top 2 in any given category. We've got power, we've got speed. The more X's means they do that better. And then literally, like, I write a description on every single kid. Here are basic defensive positionings, so you can see where people are playing. Right field, 1-step gap, 2 steps deep. You know, whatever, that may differ from where the left and center fielders are playing, and then are they a bunt threat? So that's our scouting process. Clearly you guys don't have the ability or the methods to do most of that, all right? So, why teach your catchers to call the game, okay? Like still, you're gonna know more in the dugout than they know, but you gotta help them get to the point. I probably should have put this thing first, but I didn't, I put it last. I think it better prepares them to play ball at the college level, whether or not they're ever going to call a pitch for us. If they come in not knowing anything about pitch calling, it makes it really, really difficult for us to teach them the amount of information that they need to be taught when we're dealing with 4 or 5 catchers on any of our staffs. All right? Until our catchers want to put the time and effort and energy into the scouting end of it, I will still continue to call pitches. All right? But they've got to know how to do it if I'm ever going to put it in their hands, and I even mean in practice. All right? So in terms of why teaching the catchers, number 1, I think it's absolutely a lost art. I don't think kids have any idea how to call games anymore because they're not doing it. Like when I walk up to a field and a attendant on your team is wearing armbands and they don't get to make their own decisions, how is a freshman or a sophomore in college supposed to understand it when they've never once done it in their entire lives? So I think at some point in time, you've got to teach your catchers to call. I think it also helps them learn the game. I think they understand more when they get to be the decision makers. They're really good at looking at a coach and putting down the same signal, but they don't know why they're doing it. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't understand what's going into it, or that you're thinking about game situation or your pitcher strength or what you see in a hole in the hitter's swing. They don't understand any of that. I think these things are really, really important because your catcher is always going to have a very, very different view than you do as a coach in the dugout, okay? You don't have the same view of the strike zone. I don't care how good any of us think we are at understanding umpire zones. None of us have the same view that the catcher has. You also don't see the pitcher's movement and location as well as your catcher's going to see it. Your catcher is also going to be the first one to notice if your hitter starts doing something different, like she's backed off the plate 2 inches. I can't see 2 inches from the dugout. I can see if she makes a huge movement forward or back. If she starts opening or closing the front foot, I can see those things, but I can't see the super small adjustment that she may make as soon as she gets in the box, but the catcher should see all those things. They should always see that stuff first. And then this one, I don't know. I mean, this was a huge one for me, more investment in the game. Like, do your catchers have more investment in wins and losses if she's the one back there making decisions? I did. It was literally the one and only thing that I wanted to know when I made my decision to go to college. I was not going somewhere where they called my pitches for me. It was going to be in my hand, and that's where I was going to go to school. So it was that important to me.
What age is your?
For starting, if you can put them back there in gear and a glove, let them start. I mean, if your pitchers are throwing pitches, let your catchers start doing it. Absolutely. And then here's the how, and I think this is important. It doesn't mean they get championship game if they've never done it, okay? But I think it's all a process, okay? So I think number one, most of you guys have coaching staffs that are really, really large, okay? And I think if that's the case, I think you got to use that to your benefit. So instead of there being 4 infield coaches, let somebody take the catchers on, and even if it's not like you understand catching mechanics and you're an outstanding catching coach, like talk to them about the mental side of the game, okay? I think they have to understand how to understand like how to read pitches. I think they have to be able to understand how to read hitters. But if nobody's having those conversations with them, they don't know what they don't know until you teach them what they need to know. You know, so I think that's really important. So I would say absolutely put one coach in charge of it, and they get the catching staff. They've got to be able to read hitters. At some point in time, they've got to start being able to read holes in the swings. And that doesn't mean that they're going to be great at the very beginning. They have to be able to talk pitching. They've got to be able to understand it. Give them the ability to talk in the bullpen. They're not backstops. If you want a backstop, put a net back there, give your pitcher a bucket of balls, and let her throw into a net. Let her throw into one of those rubber things that hangs down there as the actual just backstop matting, whatever. With this though, your catcher has to be able to tell you what her strengths are. She's got to be able to rank order them. It can't be like, ooh, I don't know. If you don't know, you're not paying attention behind the plate. If you can't say that this pitch is better than that one, they're not doing their job back there. They also need to know what the go-to pitches are for strikeouts. They've got to know what their pitcher prefers to throw, like in a 3-2 count. What are we going to throw because it's what she wants to throw? Those are the things that she needs to know about each one of her pitchers. I'm sorry. I think these two are really big ones that are learning process things, but that don't require anything physical. It just requires you guys to be like really attentive to them in a game. Most of you guys should have more than one catcher on your roster, I would have to assume. So take the one that's not actually in the game, have her sit by you, and just literally talk to her about why you're calling what you're calling. She's not going to learn otherwise. If they can actually chart the pitches where they're writing it down every time, they're going to have the ability to remember that better. Literally doesn't matter what your chart is, doesn't matter if you use it for anything. It's literally just her going through the process. It's like, why do we take notes when we're in school? Because if you write it down versus just hear it, you've got a much higher likelihood of retaining it. She's going to learn the information better. You got to start at that point. You've got to start allowing them to do it in practice. So whether that's bullpens, whether it's live on a field, a scrimmage situation, we've got an indoor facility where we've got a bunch of cages, so we throw live inside. So I don't care if it's a cage setting or it's an outdoor live scrimmage setting. We've got to let them call at some point in time just so they get practice of it. They figure out what gets hit, what shouldn't follow, like why do we not throw a curveball on the outside half and then a fastball on the outside half? Why do we not throw those two things back to back in that order? They have to learn all that by trial and error. In games, when you're ready for her to start calling in games, alternate innings with her, okay? So you call an inning, let her call an inning. I think that's another really good way because she has the memory of, hey, coach just did this was successful, maybe I can recreate it the next inning, okay? But it doesn't have her feeling like there's all this pressure on her to figure it out and do it all on her own, all right? Finally, when she comes to the dugout, whoever is responsible for the catchers needs to pull her aside, review what just happened, go ahead and start talking about the next batters that she's going to see in the lineup the next inning, all right? Regardless of who is calling, I think these are the things you got to figure out. Number one, everybody has a strength. Every single pitcher in the world, I don't care how good, bad, or indifferent she is, but everybody has a strength. Try to find 2 of them. It's great when they either complement each other because they're opposite movement or different speeds. So I've given you 3 options down here. These are actually 3 of our kids. Okay, so one throws obviously a very, very hard fastball, rise ball a little bit slower, great movement. This one, almost everything she throws comes out of her hand at the same speed. She's very fortunate for the fact that she can make a ball move and spin pretty tight. This one, change up drop ball pitcher, but you can see the difference in speed for those two pitches. I think if something doesn't work, let's go back to the top for a second. When something doesn't work, have them stop throwing it. We've got 2 freshman pitchers right now who both think they throw 5 or 6 pitches. Since September, they have each thrown 3. I'm gonna be honest, like, let's hope that we don't really have to use them a whole lot in games because I don't know how I'm gonna get anybody out when I only have 3 pitches because I want them to each have a 4th. But they're not capable at this point in time of progressing to a 4th pitch because they haven't mastered those 3. Frankly, they haven't mastered any one of those 3. Neither one of them can throw a fastball and hit a location 90% of the time with it, 80% of the time with it. So basically, our pitching coach is taking pitches away from them, trying to focus on those 3, and then as they become more successful with those, we will continue to add them back as they get older in our program, okay? No pitcher in the world has 9 or 10 pitches. Have your kids stop telling people that. We had a camp last weekend. Libby had one kid tell her she threw a pancake drop. You ever heard that phrase? Because I didn't know what a pancake drop was. But we had a camper last Sunday who threw a pancake drop. So congrats to her. That's still not a pitch. You have to, at the highest levels, and I don't care, like I don't mean top 25 Division I. I mean at whatever level you're playing, if you want to be one of the best teams at your level, your kids have to be able to throw changeups. All right, so this right here in the middle, this is Odyssey. Odyssey was successful. Odyssey was an All-American last year. So when I say Odyssey was successful, she's one of the best pitchers in the entire country. She's a hitter, fantastic on both sides of the ball. But as an All-American, Odyssey doesn't have a believable changeup. Okay, so Odyssey can dominate the entire season long. Well, Tennessee absolutely destroyed her because everything to Tennessee is 65 to 67 miles an hour, maybe popping off at 68 occasionally. All they have to figure out is how to zone one area of the strike zone and go to town on her because they know exactly what speed everything's coming in on. Okay, so you've got to have a changeup to be truly successful at the highest levels, whatever level you're playing. Changing eye levels, what is it, how important is it? Obviously changing eye levels is just the ability to have hitters have to widen out their zone and use everything, okay? So when pitchers can actually throw, whether it's opposite movement or just locate fastballs in addition to a rise ball or locate a fastball in addition to a drop ball, all of those things make the hitters open up and focus on one zone, okay? So Peyton, kid who was a freshman last year, won 18 ball games as a freshman, she was a rookie of the year, fantastic year. But when Peyton gets hit hard, it's because everybody knows they're looking mid-thigh and down on Peyton. Peyton's not going to throw anything up in the zone. It becomes very easy if you take everything else away and you tell your kids, you're either going to see this or you're going to see that, sit and wait on one of them. You know, so Peyton's got to get really, really crafty to be able to be good hitters when we don't have the ability to use the entire strike zone with her, okay? So climbing the ladder, basically all that means we can climb the ladder in any direction. So normally, I mean, the first time I ever heard that phrase, we were just talking rise balls. At this point, we talk about laddering every single pitch we throw it, the next one has to look different. I should be able to throw 3 rise balls in a row and have them at 3 totally different parts of the zone where we're working called strike, chase way out of the zone. Exact same thing on screwballs, exact same thing even on laddering fastballs, curveballs, drop balls, any of those things, we have to be able to throw them in different spots. Set up cones, set up some sort of visual marker where your pitchers are literally throwing in lanes or spots or whatever you guys want to call them. But when your pitcher has that ability, it makes the game really fun for you or the catcher who's ever actually calling because you know that you can count on the movement, you can count on the location. So I think climbing the ladder is a really, really important thing, especially when you're in a situation where we're in. I don't know, maybe you guys run into the exact same teams weekend in, weekend out. But like we're going to have to face the same team 3 days, 3 games in a 2-day back-to-back time span. Then we're going to see them again in our conference tournament. So we're looking at playing Hofstra 5 times in any given year. We've got to figure out how to get pretty crafty because we can't throw that same pitch for 5 games or same 2 pitches for 5 games and think we're going to beat Hofstra. Opposite movement pitches, I think, and again, I am not a pitching coach, let me say that first, but I think opposite movement pitches, especially throwing them back-to-back, are one of the most difficult things that a pitcher can do. Their body all does something naturally. It has a natural position that it's going to find. Typically that lends itself to their strength. A lot of times they're opposite, whatever the opposite pitch. Let's see, somebody's got the best rise ball you've ever seen. A lot of times her opposite pitch, the drop ball, is going to be her weakest pitch because the rise ball is what her body does naturally, okay? So when you find somebody that has the ability to go opposite directions with command, we're talking elite. And again, I don't care if they're 14, I don't care if they're 20, if they have the ability to do that, they're an elite pitcher, all right? Literally one of the things that we do is we literally just stack them back to back and they'll go anywhere from a 30 to a 50, 60 pitch workout where all they're doing is bouncing those 2 pitches back and forth so they feel what their body positioning has to feel like instead of throwing the same pitch 20 times in a row and then moving on to something else. They have to be able to make the adjustments in their body to get the results in the break that they're looking for. But when you have somebody that has the ability to do this, you can do something special in terms of pitch calling and kind of working your way through games. Obviously, there's a massive difference in the first time through the lineup versus the second or third time of the lineup. As you go deeper into the game, you've got to avoid predictability. You've got to avoid predictability with all of it. I think the first time you go through the lineup, stick to the plan. Like, you either see what you see, and I don't care what form of scouting your decisions are coming from, but stick with what you know. Like, you've done your homework for a reason. Why abandon the plan before we've even started, okay? And so to me, I never abandon the plan unless something drastic has changed to to make me alter that at the very beginning, okay? Second or third time, use your pitch, even if it's the same pitches, mix them up in a different order so the pitchers aren't saying, this is what I saw last time in this order. Avoid predictability, ladder more often, and I think you also have to mix change-ups more as you go throughout the course of the game. For me, I chart every single pitch every single time we throw live, so everything for me is very concrete. It's reachable. Our kids can come in 3 months later and say, hey, what did I do on this scrimmage? We can sit back down, we can go through it. I think that's really important, so I think you need to find charts that make sense to you. I have a different chart for what I use in games versus what I use in practice. Again, I'd be happy to send any of that stuff to you if you guys are interested. Effective velocity. So this is kind of changing directions, but it definitely has a huge factor into calling pitches. This is something that I think is really, really interesting. And the first time I heard this was, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, and I was literally blown away by the concept behind this, okay? So the concept behind effective velocity is the perception of what it feels like to a hitter's body. And I talk to our hitters all the time about this, about the fact that you're not actually changing the velocity of a pitch. So all we're going to talk about during this conversation is a fastball. 60 mile an hour board is going to be a 60 mile an hour fastball. Assume we have a right-handed hitter, you're the pitcher looking in at your catcher, okay? Minimally, if we're throwing that as far up and in as we can get it, it is minimally going to feel 4 miles an hour faster than the hitter, could be as many as 6 miles an hour faster than the hitter. So they've got to get their hands started and further out in front of them to actually make solid contact on this, okay? So here's kind of the gradient scale of how it goes up. When we hit that low out position, we are losing, feeling like, again, we are losing the feel of 4 to 6 miles an hour. So again, on a radar gun, this is still 60, this is still 60, but it feels very, very different to your body. And at the end of the day, we're literally talking about a 10 mile an hour swing from up and in versus low and out. So my point in sharing this information with you guys is, I don't care if your kids just throw fastballs. If you understand effective velocity, you can manipulate a hitter by throwing nothing but fastballs if your kid can hit a spot and can locate. When you want it up and in, she's not missing a dead red. Okay, so literally that's what you can do. That's how much timing you can mess up with a hitter just by understanding effective velocity and where you should be throwing in the zone to mess your hitter up timing-wise. All right? Final takeaways. I've got a couple slides of these. Here are my absolutes. Number one, you have to know your pitcher's order of pitches in terms of strength for that day, and you've got to understand that it's going to change, and it may change. If you play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it may be 4 orders of pitches, of course, across those 4 days, okay? They've got to have the ability to allow that to change. They're never going to be perfect every single day of the week. Something is not going to work one day when you really want it to work, but you got to go with what's working on that day, okay? I think before any batter gets in the box, I think you need to have minimally a 4-pitch sequence in mind. So it's not literally like just kind of throwing darts at a paper and saying, yeah, we're going to throw that next. You've got to have a game plan before the batter even gets in the box, but I think you need to think 3 to 4 pitches ahead on absolutely everything. I think you need to know what pitch you're throwing, okay? So to me, I say 4-pitch sequence because very rarely are we going to go and attack a hitter for 3 pitches in a row. And again, I'm always talking strikeouts when I'm talking about this, okay? So most of the time, we're not going to go right after a hitter on an 0-2 count. We're going to miss, and then we're going to come back, okay? We're going to go for a chase or something like that. And again, it's not going to be all the time. If somebody is a weaker hitter that we can dominate, yeah, absolutely, we're going to go at it, all right? So you've got to know whether something is an out pitch, we're trying to get a strikeout, we're trying to get a ground ball, fly ball out, whatever, or we're just trying to set up the next pitch. So I think those are 2 really important things. And the command your pitcher has of her pitches, kind of dictates, is this out or is this set up, all right? Attack the hitters that have to be outs. Like you guys know that, you know, probably for you guys, if you guys are seeing somebody definitely 8-9, but maybe even 7-8-9, those kids can't be on base. You don't want to turn the lineup over on weak kids. This is something though that I talk to our kids about all the time, and it's funny because like they'll actually watch ball games on TV now, and then they'll text me with this last part. You know, like I swear it's like clockwork in the most important games in the world that they've walked a batter, and then the next kid's gonna hit a bomb. Like, you know, as soon as you walk that kid, you know what the next kid's gonna do. You know, but it wasn't the walk that hurt you. Like there's still a whole lot of ways to get out of the inning, even though. I'm sorry, it's not the home run. Like we can come back from that one run, but when we're putting the extra runners on base, that's where we're really digging holes and hurting ourselves. So we actually talk to our kids all the time about that it's not the home run, it's the walk before the home run that really did the damage. I think both pitcher and catcher have to have feedback. Last fall after Mickey left, I became our pitching coach for about 2 months. Holy moly, I walked into the bullpen on day 1 and I said, I will never talk mechanics with you. I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm not going to pretend I'm your mechanical pitching coach. We're going to talk about how to set up batters. The catcher's going to have as much input as I have. The other pitchers are going to have as much input as I have. And we're going to do this collectively. And I'm telling you guys, it was the most productive 2 months of bullpens that I've ever been around in my entire life because everybody had ownership of the situation. The catchers weren't scared to talk. The pitchers didn't tell them that they wasn't their place or they didn't know what they were talking about. No, they're not pitching coaches, but they've been back there their entire lives. They've heard a lot of stuff. They learned a lot of things, and then they had the green light to finally share with their pitchers. Call pitches that your pitcher's confident in. I started by saying that when a pitch isn't working, move on. We don't need to try to work it out in the middle of the innings. Send her to the bullpen in between innings. Let her work it out down there. For me, get strikes, get outs, like go at hitters. I'm not somebody who kind of dances around the situation. We go right at them, but I also play for strikeouts. I don't play for ground balls and fly balls. To me, start ahead, stay ahead is really important. I think when pitchers get in a hole, number one, it's a total mental kind of situation, but the other thing is you're just showing the batter that many extra pitches that you don't need to. So when a pitcher comes in and just literally goes right at hitters, again, this comes back to, is she first pitch swinger or first pitch taker? So we've got to know whether we can throw a fastball through the zone or do I need to throw a movement to get her swinging first. But start ahead, stay ahead, I think is a really important concept. The better control she has, just the more creative, the more fun the game becomes for you or your catcher who's ever actually doing the calling. But they have to have control of command, of movement and location for you to really be able to play with those things. Pitfalls to avoid, I think those are just like kind of check yourself as a coach most of the time, like know why you're doing what you're doing. My last thing, okay, and I want to tell you a quick story on this. Sometimes your hitter is just simply better than your pitcher, like, and everybody's going to come across that, and I don't care how good your pitcher is. At some point, you're going to run across a hitter that's going to beat her 100 times out of 100. You're not going to get her out. Just go with it. Just walk her. All right, so regionals at Tennessee last year.
Face doing a lot of the damage in a 9-0 win.
You're kind of expecting to have that big hit from Greg, and it came in that first inning, getting the Volunteers on board.
All right, so I sat in the stands. I sat 4 rows dead center. I watched this first thing happen. This is Monmouth. Throws Megan Gregg, 4-time All-American, 3-time All-American, whatever Megan Gregg was. Throws her a changeup, hits it off of the scaffolding in center field, okay? Like, yeah, Megan Gregg, one of the best hitters in the entire country. Without question, here are some of her career stats. She leads the Tennessee's program in all these things, okay? Kid's an absolute freak. This changeup is absolute garbage, okay? That's not a good changeup. Before she throws it above the belt, she literally throws it full ball on the plate. I watched the pitch, okay? I sat there. This was not something that I missed, all right? I sat in the stands. I watched this pitch. I made the conscious decision right then and there. Yeah, we can throw a changeup with Peyton on the mound, not Fallacy. With Peyton on the mound, we can throw Megan Gregg a changeup. I don't have the clip of that. This is what Peyton's changeup looks like. That's a pretty damn good pitch, okay? It locks a lot of people up, makes a lot of people look really, really silly. Much better pitch than what the Monmouth pitcher threw, okay? So I go ahead in one of our games against Tennessee. Yeah, Megan Gregg still hit it for a home run, okay? Changeup is not Megan Gregg's strength, okay? So that's not Megan Gregg's strength matching Peyton's strength. Megan Gregg is just that good of a hitter. Without question, I should have put her on base. I don't care if it meant walking in a run. I should have put Megan Gregg on base and just given it to her because Megan Gregg is always going to be a better hitter than Peyton will ever be a pitcher, okay? So that's my final takeaway. Own up to your mistakes. If you're the one calling, you got to own it. You got to be honest with your kids, but allow your catchers to have a whole lot of the input and teach them to call games. All right? Thank you, guys.